Let's take a brief look at the 2014 version of the Sterling Lottery database. It was built with Access. It had two main functions. First, we wanted to generate a lottery ID for new database records so that Mr. Bill could just deal with numbers and not 7 and 8 syllable names of many of our students. Second, we associated a name with order picked on lottery day. So for example, you might have a name of a first grader, and that first grader was our ID number 2005, and maybe he was in our lottery pick, he was a 6th rounder, so he was the 6th pick. Okay, so that's the association we want to make. So ideally we would have had a name, one of these very long names, got associated just with a number. We could put the numbers, so we've got 2005, and we pick that up, the big hand comes in and picks it out, and we say, oh, 2005, that's the 5th guy that we've picked, and then we'd write that 5 or 6, whatever the guy came, let's say that he was the 6th pick, sorry. So he was the 6th pick, so we write that into his record. So now that we know that there was a name, we had 2005 was the ID we associated with him, so we wouldn't have to read that long name, just the number, and then we'd say, oh, he was the 6th pick. Okay. And then we'd want to have that on a continuous display. So here's the student form, and the idea that was that we would have this student form, and this student form would have a button to add lottery ID. And so we could edit the form as long as we wanted, but then we'd press the add lottery ID. So in this case, the button's already been pushed, and you can see that it's gotten the lottery ID 2002. So James Jones. Okay, this was a younger James Jones before he became a great receiver for the Green Bay Packers. So here's the code, the first part of the code that gets executed when we push that button that says I want to get a lottery number. Okay, so this is our lottery ID. Okay, so we can get confused in our terminology. So we have this one, so we have unique sets. So I think we have one set is, we were thinking would be, so greater than 1,000 would be for 3-year-olds, greater than 2,000 would be our set for 4-year-olds, etc. So we'd have a unique range, but basically we check and say, well, if you've got an ID that's greater than 999, it's already been assigned. But otherwise, we're going to go into that number tracking, and we're just going to grab the next number, and we'll see that in the next part, what we're doing in this. So here's the second part of the code, and so we grab from that number table, we get, well, what was the last that we assigned, and here it is for the 4-year-olds, how we did it. So you can see I commented out some of it. Took me a while to get this code working, so I just tried it for a couple of the branches, but not for every single grade. And then we have to build up this SQL statement. So we're building up SQL, so we take whatever the ID number was in there and we add 1 to it, we increment it by 1, okay, and then we're going to write that back to the table. So for example, if we were in the 2000 series, and let's say we were at 2005, so we'd read out 2005 and say, oh, that was the last assigned. We'd add 1 to it. We'd write that into the record. Okay, so we'd write 2006 into the record for the student and say, oh, that's his lottery ID number. But then we'd also write that back into our number table, and we say, okay, that's the last one that we wrote was the 2006. So now after we've gotten all our records, but before the lottery, we take a look and we see, for example, that a young Aaron Rodgers is in the 3-year-old, and he has an ID number of 1002. Okay, so Randall Cobb was the first one to register for the 3-year-old, and then we had another one, Aaron Rodgers. some old Packers, Willie Wood and Herb Adderley, also wanted to start over at Sterling. This has nothing to do with the order that they'll be chosen. This is just an ID number. Okay, so the thought was that we would just be able to use these names so the parent would know, oh, okay, I'm now this number, and we could actually print out on the school website the number and the corresponding position once it did it. I believe that's how Raleigh Charter does it. Okay, but that was the idea. So in any case, we're going to look up these numbers on lottery day rather than the name. But on when we did the trial run, we weren't using the numbers. So 2 years ago in the lottery, Mr. Bill would read out the names, and I had a different query to test this out. But this is the idea that we had. We'd use these numbers on lottery day. Those would get pulled out of the hat.